is today. Now, how is that going to go? Well, most likely it's going to be a quarter point raise and expressions of hawkishness. Today, we are joined by Paul, and it's going to be interesting to see if Paul is seeing what is reflecting in the price action in some of the markets out there. We're also going to take a look at Bitcoin and some of the altcoin charts. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel and our family. If you're looking for crypto news without context, or you're looking for panic selling and FOMOing in, you can find that in a whole lot of other places, but not here. If you, like me, came into crypto because you realize the potential for life-changing gains over a 4 to 8 year period, and you're looking for discussions on becoming a solid, unshakable crypto investor, you're in exactly the right place and the right family, the Rainmaker family. The reason I created this channel is because I was once new to crypto 6 years ago, and back then I was looking for a crypto channel and a network or group that understood crypto as an investment and discussed important things like investment cycles and projects and the pros and cons of those projects, the risks and guesses at upside if it came together well, and what could happen if it didn't. Well, I didn't find that, so we created it. And when I say we, it's because it's not just me anymore. It's a family of rainmakers, and you see them here in the chat. You will see some in our free Telegram group. The link to that is below, and you will definitely find them in our private Patreon group that allows you access to our Rainmaker private Discord. This is where the best discussion and best info is. There are other benefits too, but you'll have to join us to find out. Do note, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a crypto investor myself. Paul is not a financial advisor. He invests in many things, and none of this would be taken as financial advice. Well, if you haven't already, make it rain on that like button and strap in for the show. And let's welcome Paul from Definity.
Well, it's great to be here on Fed Day. So we've been working up to this day for some time, and there'll be a lot of anticipation. Equity markets have been doing very well, but not necessarily everything else. So we need to have a look at them and see what's going on.
Yeah, I'm really excited actually to get this meeting out of the way and the probable raise that will probably come out of the way. What are you seeing in the price action in some of the markets? Because the markets usually have their own guesses at what is going to happen. You see some of that reflected in the price.
Well, I think the probability at the moment of a raise is set at about 99.8%. So that tells you what the market thinks. But the thing is, even if they raise, it's going to be a disappointment because it's expected. It's not coming out of the blue. We've had plenty of time. So we now have to think about not what's happening now, it's what's going to happen thereafter, and the market's looking ahead. So in terms of it looking ahead, nothing has really changed. So there may be a short-term reaction, and by short-term, if they raise, and if they don't, oh my God, the market will just explode higher, and there'll be like a massive risk-on move. So I think the odds favor being long, because if you get the raise, it's in the price, and if you don't, you're going to get a really big move. So you could trade it on that basis. But a knee-jerk reaction if they do raise, and that might go into a few days or so, depending. But I would expect it, if there is a shake-up, it would be no more than a few days. Markets will settle down and then start back into the longer-term trend, which is bullish. And if we have a look at some of the markets, I'll just run through those quickly. Yeah. You can see that in anticipation, the Dow Jones, although it's only 30 stocks, and although it's not really a broad indication of what's going on, it's moving up. And so is the transportation index, which is up quite aggressively today, heading towards all-time highs. The NASDAQ has already performed very well, so it's due a breather, but that's still in an upward trend. And the S&P, which is probably a better market to look at because it's S&P 500 broad stocks, or the top stocks in the US, that's still curving up towards this all-time high, which is at 48.18, and I think it's going to take that out. So it's going for that. Whether there's a correction along the way, I don't know. Probably will be, but for the moment, the market is going up. I'm going to go with that trend. The Russell 2000, which is smaller stocks, small cap stocks, underperforming, but it's not going down. So for me, a consolidation is fine. It'll probably break the top of this range at some point. They're going to be hit by higher interest rates more than the big boys, because the cost of borrowing is much bigger for them compared to being able to borrow as a bigger blue chip company. So that's why these interest rate moves are possibly hurting them a bit more. But given that I think we're at the top or near the top of the cycle, those should follow suit. So I wouldn't be surprised if they play catch up and we get a big move there to the upside, but we shall see. Looking at the VIX, it's still pressing lower, which means the market's happy. We should also bear in mind something that's quite important, and that is that we've got August coming up, and August is when everybody goes on holiday, certainly in Europe. I'm not sure what the deal is in America, but I would guess it's fairly similar. And you can get some really weird moves in August, which don't necessarily reflect what's going to happen in the long term. It's just because desks aren't manned anymore or by the sort of main decision makers. So things can sort of consolidate, or you get some weird moves. We can talk about that obviously next month, but we're getting close to that. So it should be, it may be that the market will go into a bit of a consolidation just because there's this holiday period coming up, which tends to affect everybody. So broadly speaking, everything's still looking bullish. Let's get this interest rate move out of the way, and we'll certainly see a short-term reaction. And if I guess we'll be hearing what the Fed have to say with either the interest rate rise or not. So we'll be. I personally don't listen to it. I just look at what the markets say, but I think everyone else will.
Yeah, totally. I wanted to give a shout out to everyone here in the chat. Mickey the G said, Anchor, bro. One huge partnership and news after the other. Sleeping Giant, Microsoft, Tencent, Binance Labs, etc. So if we have a second after we look at some of the other things, we'll take a look at Anchor. We do have a packed show, and we have a shorter time window than we normally have, because then right after I'm joined by Meld for an interview. And finally was able to get Meld to join us again. It's been about a year since I last spoke with them, and they're going to give us some updates. So let's see. Chris Ashby says, what's up, Jay and Paul? Thanks for all you guys do.
Hi, Chris. How's it going?
GS asks a great question. Will the next bull run be the last one? What is your opinion? I don't think it will be, unless the US dollar, goes the way of like Argentina or something. I think we'll have at least one more. What was your thoughts?
I'm assuming, I'm not sure whether he means in equities or cryptocurrencies, but I guess that they will be all linked anyway. So, I mean, what I think we're going to have is a major bull run, because that's what the cycles suggest in both. And will it be the end? Well, there could be a very big correction, What we're waiting for is man on the street type adoption. You know what I mean by that. Yeah. So you know when you get in a cab and they start telling you about what you should buy, or members of your family who've been wondering what on earth you've been doing all this time, looking at this stuff, and then they're suddenly going, oh, well, I've heard that this is pretty good, or actually adopting it. Bitcoin maybe having, or some other currency, cryptocurrency, having some use case in your local Starbucks. So something like that, and everyone just going crazy about it, is when then we start to feel the contrary opinion. But that could last a long time. Just because you see it doesn't mean it's the end. It just means it's potentially the beginning of the end.
And potentially this bull run is going to be, like you said, massive, because we'll be able to get big penetration into the retail, but also really for the first time institutional penetration.
Yeah, it's just the amount of money that's going to start washing around. It will just find its way. It will find its way into the markets. There will be winners and losers, as we know, and we're looking at some of the diciest yet perhaps interesting ones that could go 1000x, but also could go to zero. So that there is plenty of risk. But I think when the bull market starts in earnest, quite a lot will go up, and quite a lot of that might not be justified to go up. That's really the definition of a bull market for me. It's like everything goes up regardless, and then the ones that are aren't underpinned with anything. Those are the ones that fall really fast early and then start to tail off, and the good projects carry on, and then everything turns. So it'd be interesting to look at the cycles and see how everything plays out. But the majors, looking at the majors and comparing them in the way we try to do on the show, is a very good way of working out broadly where we are. And for the moment, we haven't started this big bull run. We've started a bull run, but it's not going yet. So there's plenty more, I think, to come.
Agreed. Well, let's dive into some of the crypto charts. Let's start off with Bitcoin. I'm going to bring up your screen here. What do you see happening with Bitcoin?
Yeah, so we had this consolidation, didn't we? And we were waiting for the breakout, and it broke out, and then it came back down again. Very frustrating. You see how we were explaining this is normally a warning sign when it doesn't go, and it broke the bottom part of that, which means anyone who was short-term trading it, they got bored and just got out. And it's like a train at the station. It didn't go, so they get out. But that doesn't change the big picture view. It's still bullish. The moving averages are still going up. The trend is still higher. And putting the pieces together with what we're seeing with the other markets, I still think there's a buying opportunity coming. I'm just not sure how far could it go. I don't know. Could it correct more if they raise? Possibly. But I think that it's being pulled like elastic against what's going on in the equity markets, because the equity markets, excuse me, once again are going up, and this isn't following. So I think that there could be a rotation, actually, because equity markets have gone so far up that we might see a correction in equities, but actually a move up in cryptocurrencies. So I'll be looking at the standard sort of support points for buying opportunities: 28,547 and 26,387. That's the 200-day moving average. The second one's the 200-day moving average, and this is just natural support. So we'll see what comes in. And if I could actually just jump very quickly into looking at the dollar index, because sorry, I forgot to mention that before. What we saw was that breakdown from 100.82, but you see it rallied back up to retest it and actually go a little bit higher. So that's, for me, partly why obviously they're buying ahead of this interest rate decision, because of course you'd buy dollars ahead of what you're expecting to be an interest rate rise. But then will they be selling, buy the rumor, sell the fact? That's actually what could be going on there. So that's possibly why the Bitcoin chart is coming off a little bit, because there's not because of the dollar per se, but just because of this expectation of interest rates. Why would you buy it just ahead of that? You may as well just either wait and see if you can get it cheaper. But the risk is obviously that it's in the price and it goes up very quickly from here. So yeah, so I think correction, but within the context of a bull market.
What are your thoughts? Have you been following the Bollinger Band width? And one of the narratives going around is the width on the Bollinger Band is actually narrower than ever before. So I've got pulled up this indicator and showing the width, and I guess hold on, my banner's in the way so people can't see it. I do want to thank our strategic relationships. They do give us tokens to give away, both on-chain and bumper, on our Friday live streams. But I removed that out of the way so we could see the Bollinger Band width is lower than it's been in a very, very long time, possibly ever. And usually what happens is, like, that's a pullback that then the volatility is then going to increase again. It's either going to, which means it's basically going to go up or down massively when the Bollinger Band gets so constricted like that, this width between these two.
Well, it is possible, but you see, the Bollinger Band reflects the volatility of the market, not the other way round. So in itself, for me, it's just saying that volatility has just dropped, because you can put whatever you want in terms of the bands. The bands can be, there's standard deviations from the trend. So it's just saying this is 1.5 standard deviations from the normal trend on both sides. And it creates this band, and the band obviously follows it, and it makes it look like it's controlling it because it's following it. But that's a bit like saying that a puppy is controlling where you're going because it's following you, and it's the other way around. So so volatility has dropped, but you'd expect that. You know, you'd expect that because the volatility has been high for such a long time, and they go through cycles. So quite how that would be a signal for a major move, well, all it's saying is that volatility will increase, which means that there'll be a big move either up or down. So that's possible. That's possible. And actually, I do think there will be eventually a strong move higher. But for me, that's like it's reflecting the market rather than telling the market what it should do. That's how I see it. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting, but in the end, I think, well, what do I do on that information? Do I buy it or do I sell it? And it comes down to price action for me. So if I think there's going to be a big move, then I've got to decide in which direction, and then I'd look at support anyway, and I'd look at the moving averages and things that indicate the main trend, because obviously I want to go with that if possible. So in the end, the analysis becomes the same. We're looking for a pullback, potentially as a buying opportunity in the big picture.
Makes perfect sense. Let's jump over to our first one that we had suggested, which is Render.
Yes. So Render, that's one I've been bullish on, and that's one that's actually starting to correct a little bit here. So I remember we were talking about this consolidation. Let me just get this chart back up. And so we were talking about this consolidation around here, and it broke 259. And the trend was bullish, and it broke out, and it came back down to support, and then it was in this consolidation again. So we drew another line there, and it's just sagged a little bit. So it's still just trading for me in a range. I don't think anything's changed from a longer term perspective in terms of it being in a bull trend. I'm not going to worry overtly until if it were to break below this $1.17, that for me is a bit of a negative signal. That would be very negative. But the 200-day moving average is higher. The 60-day moving average is flat, reflecting it's going sideways. And I think for me, looking at the bigger picture trend, I'm more influenced by the 200-day moving average, which is still above. So I wouldn't be buying necessarily more here. I would be waiting with a long position. So for me, it's a wait, but I still overall like it, and I like the overall direction of the chart. It moved well ahead of everything else, as we know. There's plenty wasn't moving when this was moving up. So there's chance for a catch up for the other things, and this can go sideways for a bit. So it looks like it's going to do that. But overall, I'm bullish. I just think I wouldn't add any more here.
Okay.
So it's a wait.
You would be a wait, yeah.
I'd be a wait.
I would definitely be a wait as well. I am not going to jump into that price action because it often goes through a run and then it goes through a pullback like this. We're seeing the possible pullback, and this just may be in bull markets. It's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, sometimes 3 steps forward, 1 step back, and it may just be doing that. The overall market's been lagging behind this, and this has been an early runner. So it's unclear to me whether it's going to pull back more severely and wait for the general market, or if it's going to continue running. Do I like Render for the long term? I love Render for the long term. What is it going to do in the short term is my bigger question. And so I really like this one when it was massively down and covered it a number of times. It's since run up a bunch. So this isn't a buy zone for me. If I was holding some, I would have already been taking profits, as we talked about before. And then I would just be waiting to see if it comes down a whole lot more, then I'd be buying more. And if not, I would just be waiting on the positions I have. There's other ones that I like for better entries right now. So it's definitely a wait. I would have already taken some profits on this. So on this one, I'd just be waiting. Fantastic suggestion.
Yeah, it's good to get that one back up again and just see what's going on, because that was very hot before, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Let me just go into some of the fundamentals behind it. So this is CoinMarketCap. It's at a fully diluted market cap of about $1 billion. So it had crossed over $1 billion threshold. Its previous high went all the way to 740 during the Metaverse pump of late 2021. And so it's still massively on sale from what its previous high was. And it's doing this nice climb. Look at how it did this climb before, right? So often can be compared probably to this early climb. You can see way down here. Let's just see. Way down here. But we'll see how this shakes out. I loved it down here, and that's usually my buying strategy, is I like to buy when it's very boring. It's getting boring again, which is good. And boring is just a fun way to reference that, like, when something gets out of the narrative. I still want to look and see if the company's alive and it has good future prospects, which I believe Render has fantastic future prospects and it's definitely alive. But I like when it's out of the narrative rather than buying it when everybody's talking about it, because then it's too hot. I only do that if I am pretty certain it's going to go up further and I'm just going to hold it for a short time and then get out. So let's jump on to the next one. This recommendation comes from a really good friend of mine. We've been friends for 20 something years. We worked together years ago at Accenture. And
Cool.
yeah, he follows the channel, and yeah, so he suggested we take a look at Metaverse Index, which is an index of the different metaverses out there, which is a fun way to be in metaverse projects without having to pick this specific one.
Yeah, I like the idea of that. That sounds really interesting. Just buying the index and then not worrying, because obviously this should reflect the strongest of the metaverse projects. But I'd have to look at how it's calculated. So a normal index would have some form of the strongest in the sector reflected,
Yeah.
and in sort of market cap size. But yeah, for this, I mean, obviously, I'm bullish on the metaverse index, or the metaverse, from a long-term perspective. We're just waiting for it to get going again, aren't we? And this reminds me of another chart. I think something we looked at last time. It was really a very similar chart where we had this big move down, a rally, and then these lower highs, and we're looking for a break of those lower highs in order to start the first phase of the reversal. And this hasn't quite done that yet. So if you imagine, if it just goes down a little bit more, it'd be so close to this prior low that it's in a kind of dangerous spot here. But it's not done a lot for a while, for about a month in this short-term consolidation. So for me, the hurdle for it to break through is this downward trend line here. And so I would be waiting until at least that breaks. And if it does, this whole area here would start to look more like a basing pattern. But we can't call that yet while all the highs are falling. So it may be that there's more pain to take before it goes back up. That is certainly possible. But I think for the moment, it's going to have to be a wait. But it's definitely one. I mean, I really appreciate actually this being on the radar, because I hadn't heard of it, and I think it would be a very good thing to follow as a normal index. So I'm going to stick it with my list of things to follow on a weekly basis.
Yeah, this was a great suggestion. And you asked about how it's calculated on CoinMarketCap. It gives us a little bit of an idea. It says the MVI uses a combination of square root of market cap and liquidity weighting to arrive at the final index weights. We believe that liquidity is an important consideration. The space overall is rather nascent still, and shallow liquidity complicates on-chain rebalancing and portfolio allocation. The final index weights are calculated using the following formula. And they go into it here.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, so it looks like a proper index, right? And it's tradable on Uniswap and version 2 and Uniswap version 3. So it allows you a way to get in and out and just hold for a while. It's fantastic. As markets mature, they have more of these indexes, because a lot of people who don't follow day to day, they don't want to have to see what's hot and what's not. They just want to put some money in an index and leave it for a long time. So it's nice to see this come up. I didn't know this was out there either, so thanks for that. All right, let's take a look at the next one. For me on the price, it's actually a buy. Going back to the charts real quick, if you still have it up, I like this lower zone here. I love it. And sometimes it can be frustrating because I buy there and it goes cheaper. But because I hold for like the medium to long term, it's okay with me. I just try to buy cheap. probably the bottom is in on a lot of things, in my opinion, and this bottom is probably in. And so it's nice and cheap, and I like where it's at. So I rate this a buy for the strategy that I use. All right, let's go to the next one, which is Bumper, which we just had on the stream yesterday. Was it yesterday already? 2 days ago, and the interview was fantastic. Some massive updates with Bumper. Paul, you might even want to watch that because it is very relative to replacing options as a way of hedging. And so we've talked about this a number of times, but nobody explains what they do better than Jonathan, the CEO who joined us. And they're out of London, or out of the UK. I think it's London. But anyway, fantastic, brilliant people that came together and made this product. And they're about to go live with it in the next month. And so some very complex ways of solving this so that they can beat the pricing, be more efficient than the pricing desks of options and option desks, while providing better downside protection. And for those that take the other side, a way to earn some really good yield without the risks of when somebody is making the options, there is some bigger risk there than somebody providing liquidity and just making a passive return. So I think it streamlined some efficiencies of providing downside protection that wasn't possible before. Let's take a look at the charts and see what you're seeing.
Sure. I mean, the thing with risk, just as a general kind of message, there's always risk in something in some way. So it just may not be apparent. So there is never an easy or a risk-free way. I'm not saying that you're saying that, by the way, but I'd be very interested to see that, how it works, because when it comes to actual mathematical equations, I also think you can't copyright them. So if the market gets wind of something, it'd be really interesting to see how it works. But having said that, if you're a first mover on something and you're providing a service, then it's and people, if it kind of fits in with what people want, then the first mover advantage will be absolutely massive. So there's definitely some very interesting potential here with what they're doing. But when it comes to technicals, really, whether I understand it or not is not what's important. It's whether the market trend is in a positive move. And at the moment, from what I've seen since we started talking about Bumper, it's been in a consolidation phase, which looks like a reversal pattern, and it has potential further upside. I mean, we've seen this 10 cents level being tested. We haven't looked at it for a little while, but this whole area here was seen as an inverse head and shoulders with a breakout. And as the market goes up, I firmly believe, rightly or wrongly, that a bullish market will encourage more people, more liquidity. That's more profit for them. So a bull trend is more players, and that therefore means more customers. So I think this is a buy, and it still looks like it will go higher, but it is one of those obviously very risky things, in the same way that you're looking at the beginning of something, and we'll have to see how it plays out. But a lot of the projects are like that anyway. So yeah.
So Paul rates this as a buy. I like it. It is unclear. Sometimes when things are basing out, they take a W pattern, and it seems to be holding the trend line that it's on. If it breaks down from here, it might come back down before it's really ready to run. And they do have their mainnet launching. One of the advantages of Bumper is that I feel like their potential is way higher than most of the projects that are in this market cap zone. So it's a $7.2 million market cap right now. If their product is successful and they get some massive traction, it could be a market cap in the billions, the tens of billions. Maybe it would have to go massive to hit a market cap above that in this next cycle, but that potential is there. Whether it will happen or not, I don't know. And it really depends on how good the mainnet is, how much traction they're able to get, how much their first mover advantage really comes in. Because like Paul said, it's math and it can be copied, just like Uniswap ended up being copied by SushiSwap. But Uniswap had enough early mover advantage that Uniswap became still the dominant player and still is the dominant player. So we don't know how that's all going to play out, and that's part of risk. One of the investments I made that worked out extremely well was Axie Infinity, but there were many points along that journey before anyone really knew what it was, where it was a great unknown. It ended up launching and becoming the #1 blockchain game for a long while, but you know, that's part of the investment cycle. I like the chance on this. We see this upward trend like this going on. If it does break to the downside, it might come back and form more of a W, or it might take off from here. So I have been dollar cost averaging in massively. I like anything under 10 cents. So for those that have stocked up a whole bunch, I actually love that it's back under 8 cents. Do know it could come back down for another dip and you could get in some more at like the really cheap pricing. I did reference this way back in December as one of my favorite buys. I was just shocked and astounded that it was under 2.5 cents. And I was buying like crazy. And so it's still 3x up from there. But this launched, when it launched, it was like 30 or 40 or 50 cents. And that wasn't a terrible price either for the potential. We're just in this zone where we're really spoiled for options. And the price is just so low. So I'm really, really high on it. I actually continue to get more. So I guess I'm going to rate it a buy because that's what I'm doing. Do I hope it comes back down to get cheaper? I would love that. I would love that. So I am also biased to this project because, well, we recently did our strategic relationship that lasts just for 3 months. But the reason we did that strategic relationship is I've loved this one for 2 years. Most projects don't make it through the vetting process that I'll agree to a strategic relationship with them. Just one chain and Bumper in the last year really have made it through that process. So let's take a look at our next
PropC, is it?
Yeah, PropC.
So yeah, PropC, not sure what that is. Not a whole load of price action to check out. So we'll have to see a bit more about what's happening there. I can see why it's being asked for because it's clearly running. We've had this whatever happened here, I don't know. Perhaps that was the beginning at 19th of May. So very little data, which is always, obviously you've got to be cautious about something that you haven't got a lot of data on. But this was a clear W breakout, and it's respected that with a retest. So if we have a look at the way it broke through the first buy signal, if you like, that for me that would be the first buy signal, and then we've got this trend which is run very nicely, and it's consolidating or coming back quite aggressively. So there's must be some news out today or just profit taking generally. So broadly speaking, it would be potentially a buy because it's in an upward trend and it's formed a base. But obviously there are big caveats with this, i.e. there's not a lot of data, and I personally wouldn't be it would be a smaller position because of the huge amount of risk that you're taking, unless it's something, I actually, in these occasions, I'd actually need to have something fundamental to make me want to do it. So it might be something that I like the sound of, and it's in a sector that I think could do potentially well, or it's got some USP. And then I would use that side because I do occasionally use fundamentals. It's just that I'm more obviously technically orientated. So I'd have to say right here, right now, it feels like I'm chasing it a bit. So I'd wait, and I don't mind chasing something, but I chase something when it's got a lot of data history, not when it's not, if that makes sense. So yeah. It's got to be a wait for me just through sheer caution of what the project is. But I may change my view depending on what you're about to say next.
So prop chain is the ticker is PropC. Its
So you've
market
got a bit
cap,
more data. Yeah.
yep, is 5 million. A fully diluted market cap is almost 200 million. That means only a very small supply of the tokens are in circulation. Looks like about 2.24%. Recently launched, what PropC is. PropChain is a Luxembourg-based organization that specializes in tokenization of real estate assets, with subsidiaries in Lithuania and Dubai that facilitate its operations. PropChain enables users to invest or fractionalize real estate strategies and assets. So this is a place that I love where crypto is going. Which projects are going to own and dominate this space is hard to say. I think the US regulatory entities are going to be very, very tight on this and try to clamp down so that they can control things. I mean, look at who most of the regulators are in this area in the US are put in as former Goldman Sachs people, and they're going to have a bias towards handing this type of control over to the organizations that they know, like Goldman Sachs and stuff. And so is a project launching out of Luxembourg that has subsidiaries in Lithuania and Dubai, is it going to take over the world? No, but it could have a first mover advantage for Europe, Saudi Arabia, that area. So it's curious. For me, it's just a wait. This is a sector that I know that there's going to be well, I can't say I know. I suspect there will be massive pushback from regulators in. And so I don't dive too deep into this one just because I just can't see I don't know enough about what hurdles the regulators will have and put in the way and who they will favor. And regulators shouldn't play favorites, but they do, especially the longer that regulating office has been around. Usually the people that are in charge of them have connections to spaces, and connections matter. It's just a people thing. People like people that they know and they feel they can trust. People have a bias towards firms maybe that they work for and they feel they can trust. So it's going to be hard for a company like this to have worldwide traction in such a regulated market, not just in the US, but in other countries too. And that's my caution. That's why for me, it's just a wait. I love that real estate will eventually get to this, where why not have big REITs and other things on the blockchain where you can vote on the blockchain, where you could invest in something. There's a management company that runs a bunch of the assets and you could just invest in the token to hold part of that portfolio. It's a fantastic use case for the blockchain. It's just how it's going to shape together. I don't know. Let's see. All right.
Yeah, I'd be tempted to just put in some money and assume that it's going to go to zero, because I like the idea, but this is one of those ones where I don't know if there's someone else doing something similar. I'd have to check that out. But I like the sector and I like the idea, so would change me to a buy, but it would be basically the sort of money where you just say, well, if it goes to zero, forget it. It's almost like an option on itself. It's either going to expire worthless or it's going to go up a lot. So so a small amount of money in that sector, because I just like the idea, and that's it. So there's no more scientific about it, nothing more scientific. So you take that for what you will, but that's just what I would do.
Cool. Let's take a look at Velodrome Finance, which is our next one, and then we might have a chance to get caught up on some viewer suggestions.
Sure. Yeah. So Velodrome, this looks interesting actually, and going back to the full price history, we see some very strange things going on here. I'm going to put that down to bad data, but it does trade quite nicely from a technical point of view. Smooth upward trend, consolidation, correction. This correction is not fully come all the way back down, so it's actually holding its gains, and it looks like it's moving in for another round to head towards these highs. So this looks like phase one, and this is consolidation now, phase 2. So I like it. I think this is a buy. I can see why it's consolidating right here, because there's a lot of resistance in this zone from where it was bought before and then sank. And it took a bit of time getting through that resistance point. So it came down and now it's gone through it. You know, there's obviously some people who bought it back here, who are getting their money back, who are exiting their positions. But broadly speaking, I think looking at the big picture, this looks good. So I'd be a buyer. Now, this could be a bullish triangular constriction, which needs to go sideways for a bit longer. It's sitting quite heavily on this support, and it is massive support. So the problem with that is that if this goes, you could get quite a reaction to the downside. So that might give you an opportunity to buy it cheaper. But whilst it's above this this level here, or even sort of 9.5 cents, that's the next support level. So between sort of 10 cents, should we say, or 11.2 cents and 9.5 cents, I think that for me is its support pad, and I would be willing to buy it in that zone, looking for a longer term upward trend. So it's a buy, but I think we're going to see the next big move based upon this triangular constriction. If it takes the lower point out, that's going to encourage a better selling, possibly quite a sharp move down. But I think that could potentially be a buying opportunity given the big picture structure of this chart. If it takes the high out, then that's really bullish for me. And I'd almost, if I was playing it cautiously, I'd wait for the top line of that to break around 12 or 13 cents, maybe even 14 cents. And the reason why I do that is because it would have like 23 cents written all over it if it potentially did that. So yeah, I think this is a really interesting one. So yeah, it's a buy.
Awesome. Well, this is the first time hearing of Velodrome. It's hard to keep track on the 22,000 plus altcoins there are.
There is that.
Interesting pick, right? The price action is definitely in a good point. So 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and it looks like it might be ramping up for a further breakout. So it looks like Velodrome is some kind of, let's see, it is the next evolution of the Solidity Exchange model introduced by Andrew Cronier. Okay, so going to their Twitter, it gives us an indication, like they don't have a website to go to. They do have an app that you can go to. So if you come up here and you're like, oh, okay, I guess they have a website, but it's right into the app. So this gives us some information. Coming over to their Twitter gives us more information. It's got 234,000 followers already. So that's good. I would definitely say this is substantive, even though I haven't heard of it. Their market cap is still pretty low for something so substantive. So it's at 16 million, and it looks like about a third of their tokens are in circulation, which is fine. It was really cheap here, and so now it's up about 8x from the lows. That's okay. It can still do well from here. I do think Optimism and a few of these other layer 2s are where a lot of the action and DeFi and other things are going to go. So it's got a good position. Velodrome Finance's Twitter gives us kind of an indication of where things are at. Looks like they're releasing a version 2. So the Velodrome V2 era has arrived with a bang, producing the highest fees in the protocol's history. Read all about what's coming next with Velodrome Relay and our new concentrated liquidity automated market maker. So cool. Great suggestion. I would say on the price, it's tentative buy for me of just buy and then not a big position. Missed the lows, but a buy for the long term. So good suggestion. Hold on. All right. Okay. So let's take a look. I want to look at Meld, who we're going to be interviewing in just a sec. I don't usually pull up the price charts when I'm interviewing a project because it can get additional regulatory scrutiny on them if they're really talking about the price of their project. And so let's take a look at the charts, because Meld will be joining us literally in 15 minutes. What are you seeing in the price action on the chart?
So this is again an interesting basing pattern. It's going sideways, which might look boring, but that's okay. That's the sort of boring I like, because it's potentially building up for a trend. It triggered that around this 2.7 cents level where it went through it and came back down. But when something is quite volatile, you've got to give it a bit more room. You can't be completely exact with these levels as much as you try. But 1, 2, 3 times, fourth time it broke through, it's come back again. So it's a little frustrating that those gains didn't stick. But the consolidation has been going on for some time, which for me is a good sign that it's going to eventually build out to a breakout to the upside. So I would stay positive on it from a price action point of view. But would I buy it right here? Potentially a small position, just as a marker, not as anything that I'm expecting it to suddenly start moving just because I bought it. Where I would like to rebuy it is through this 2.7 cents level, and maybe give it a little bit more room up to 2.9 cents. If it can get through there, then that should be an indication the trend has started. So that would be my filter for buying a sort of more meaningful position, having nibbled at it at a lower level because it's in the sideways range. So I'm bullish on it. I just think not quite yet. It needs to do a bit more before I would actually say, yeah, let's get it. So you could read that as a wait, which I think, to be fair, on balance, it would be a wait at this point. But you know, it is definitely doing enough of this sideways price action to indicate that it could be getting ready for something interesting.
Yeah, I do think it is getting ready for something interesting. So it's a small buy at the current price. And I just say small buy. It's not that it's at a bad price. It's at a good price. I just think it's going to come back a little bit cheaper. And maybe I end up being wrong on that. I have stocked up on Meld. I have a big bag of it. So I'm happy with my dollar cost average price on it. And I'm waiting for the long term. But I have a lot of this, and so I'm excited with what the price is showing, that it's built up this nice base and it's probably ready to move sometime in the near future. You might get another bite at the apple at below 2 cents if you're lucky, which I think is a fantastic price for Meld. All right.
Yeah, there's a lot of support at 1.7 cents here. You can see if it does come back down, this is where it held here, and it's
that's probably
it was
where
what
it come to.
Yeah, so there is a lot of support there, but also think if it gets there and it takes that out, then it could be a bit sticky, because you're not far from the low. You've got to be careful there.
Yeah, it's fine with me if it hits all-time lows, as long as it's not for a reason like they're going out of business or something, which I don't think is the case. They're about to launch their main net and some things are hopping for them, which is why I want to bring them on the channel. All right, so stay tuned for that in 12 minutes. I want to jump into our first recommendation, Anchor. That's ANKR, and take a look. That's from Mickey the G.
Yeah, now that rings a bell. Did we look at that a while back? I think we must have done.
We totally have.
So similar to some of the other markets in the sense that we've got this upward trend, a correction, and we're in the middle of this range. So it hasn't really moved out of that. It's not set its stall for us to say it's ready to run, but there's plenty of resistance at this 5 cents area, which I think eventually it will get drawn to. And the closer it gets to that, the more bullish I become, because a break of that would be a fantastic signal. But where it is here, it's just too much in the middle of a range. So I'd have to wait, really. I really would have to wait. I'd like the prospects on it because, broadly speaking, from a market perspective, everything's looking good or is going the right way. So I'm more on risk on mode and looking for opportunities. Whether this joins in, we'll wait to see. So if we start seeing lots of other things moving and this is still not moving up, that might be a bit of a warning sign. But from a pure technical point of view, it's still in this neutral zone right now, and even a small nudge over sort of 2.5 or maybe 3 cents would change the chart considerably. Even such a small move, I mean, it would do it in both directions, to be fair. So if it started to come down, that wouldn't look great, but there's plenty of support around this 1.5 cents to sort of 2. So it could come down into a buy zone and then move higher. But what would be nice is if it just went straight up and start, and then we could start the scenario of it being drawn towards this 5 cents area, which is where it becomes really interesting if it can get through there. So for me, it's a wait. We just have to see which area it gets drawn towards, and perhaps you can suggest it again on another show, and we'll get an update on it if I forget to look at it.
Yeah, I like where the price is at. I'm actually going to rate this as a buy. Is it a? Here's my thoughts on it. Let me add this in. I like that their market cap for a big potential project, their market cap is fairly low. Now, this is higher than most everything that I'm actually holding in my thing. I'm in a pretty risky portfolio in that I'm holding a lot of tokens with market caps between 500,000 up to 10 million. And so very few do I hold that have market caps up like this. And I don't hold any anchor, but I love where the price action is at right now. It's come back down, not to its prior to 2021 lows, but I don't think it'll hit those numbers again. So its price from its previous highs has come down about, 90% or so. So it's a nice bite at the apple for probably what will lead into a bigger bull market, at which point most things will pump. And I don't see why anchor wouldn't do well. I'm not familiar with the news that you referenced. I would love to hear that, specifically what the news is. That would make a bigger difference as to whether I would just nibble a little bit or whether I'd buy a bunch. So with that said, let's go ahead and wrap up just so I can get ready for the next show. Know that the crypto market is likely bottomed, and good decisions made during these pullbacks lead to life-changing ones when the market turns around. So if you haven't already, take the Zero to Crypto Hero course. The link is in the description to help align your thinking correctly, because these principles, when applied, will save you tons and make you tons over the next 4 years. So use the code Rainmaker for half off. This wrap is for all of you to reinforce the principles that I share that make all the difference in higher returns over time. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Paul.
To the space, chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, you buy before you could. Was told to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss. Cause I always make the time in mind. I stick the one out cause I'm patient like that. And I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't leave with my heart. The principles are simple, they're leaving a mark. Why when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling, go parabolic and dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, the time like the present. The next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, to study and to know that nothing comes easy but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this road cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing and when it's slow will be the target. They say it's come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. Strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go of the hate, let the haters be cracking. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Amazing time fly by, years going so fast. This game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, but time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough, and that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not